Well, we're going to do the speed version of this since we're a little short on time and I'm a little long on words. So a couple shout-outs. Read this book so you don't die in your chair. It's a good one. If you struggle with depression, Greg Boggs, yes, has done a bunch of talks, and he runs a support forum online, devpress.com. You may see me out there every once in a while. We had a joke planned here because it's Super Bowl week. We're going to do a paid advertisement for Jesse Link, but I don't have time for that, Jesse. Sorry, so we'll share your joke somewhere else. So today's talk is about estimates, and here's a setup for a joke that we're just going to blow past because it's examples of English sentences that don't really mean anything, because what we really need to get to is this sentence, because this is one we're familiar with that we probably all struggle to know what that really means. If you're 90% sure of something, does that mean that you've actually thought about, well, if we could travel in time 10 times on this project, we're going to get it right 9 times out of 10. Now, probably that's just me choosing to be difficult, but we can all be reasonable and guess what's really meant by that stuff, right? Does it really matter that much? Well, in 2006, Kathy Sierra wrote this blog post about not making demos look done. It talks about the impact of feedback on the quality of a mock-up. A mock-up that looks finished tends to elicit more specific and less useful feedback than a mock-up that's rough, which can spur feedback at a higher and more helpful level. So when we apply this to estimates, which should be vague and guesses, hunches, experience, and we add numbers, numbers tend to bring an undue level of specificity. If we start talking numbers, we frequently start debating numbers. So what I say is get rid of the numbers. If I limit myself to these 4 words, if I just say hours or days, then the conversation can stay at an appropriate level for estimates rather than presuming we know more than we do. And if anyone tries to do the math, it might be clear that they're doing something fishy. Now, in the real world, we need numbers, right? Why? Well, because of contracts. But why do we have contracts? Because we want accountability. Why do we want accountability? Because we want to build trust. But when did fortune telling become a valid tool for establishing trust? In 2013, Ron Jeffries, one of the founders of XP and Agile, wrote this article for the Prague Online magazine describing the original Chrysler C3 payroll project. In a conversation between Sue Unger, the CIO of Chrysler, and Kent Beck, Kent had just explained how they'd be working, and Ms. Unger asked, "How will I know whether we are on track or not?" Kent said, "We ask you to visit every month. We'll show you our task cards and show you how many are done, how many are left. If you're not satisfied with that, cancel the project." Sue said, "I can do that." So we can see early in XP a de-emphasis of estimates anyway. And you may be saying, yeah, but what about story points? Well, in fact, actually, the first edition of XP Explained had this concept of load factor, not story points. And load factor was this value you could factor into your task estimates to try and determine the translation from ideal to real time, which by the second edition was softened down to story points because many teams realized that the effort of figuring out your load factor didn't really pay for itself. So the notion of yesterday's weather started to take hold, this idea that weather forecasting is about as accurate if you just predict what actually happened the day before. In other words, why invest in an expensive computer model when all you really need to do is if there's some chance that today a tornado is going to rip my house off its foundation. Texas. But the progression even goes further with Ron, because in the 2013 article, he actually says this: "I may have actually invented points, and if I did, I'm sorry now." So why is he apologizing? Well, in my opinion, it's because numbers are guesses based on imagination. Therefore, now, at this point, I have a story, but we're going to skip the story. So if you tell somebody that you're 90% sure of something, but the 10% happens, then what? What really needs to happen in this case is a sound contingency plan put into place. And I had a nice example of how when we put a contingency plan into place, the numbers can just blow away. Because I believe when you have other things in play, that's contingency plans, communication, transparency, and managing expectations, not only are these things are greater than numbers, but put together, numbers don't even need to enter into the conversation. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying we never provide estimates. People on the business side of the equation do have resource constraints and do need to understand what sort of effort and risks they're undertaking as best we know. And many of you may be thinking, hey, numbers are fine with me. I know it can take X number of days. It's fine. But the bottom line for me is expressed in this quote: "Never give an answer with more precision than warranted." So that's the talk. You can go to that link on my blog, get some more background on that quote, as well as links to other related subjects. I'd love to hear y'all's feedback on this. And while Tyler closes us out, juggling.
Thank you, Chris. That was quite the speed round. That was awesome. Appreciate it. Juggling included and about.